Okay, so we've talked about how ridiculous this whole pro-life kidnapping concept was, but I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't at least take a second to talk about it seriously.
Let's take this deeper like we do.
Okay. Welcome to ERI.
That's right.
All right. So, okay, Josh, if there actually was a real person that wanted to kidnap an abortion vulnerable woman or a woman that was literally on her way to get an abortion, like
to try to get her to miss an appointment.
Exactly. Like they were essentially trying to prevent her from making it to her appointment on time because they knew when her appointment was and they were kidnapping her so that she wouldn't be able to have the abortion. Is that actually morally permissible? Like, let's actually consider that question for a second. Like, could pro-life kidnapping ever actually be okay?
I mean, after all, if abortion is actually killing babies, if we really believe that abortion is killing babies, like
then shouldn't we be doing?
Wouldn't you kidnap? So, like, I get asked questions like this all the time. Not usually about kidnapping, but I get asked questions about like if pro-lifers really thought abortion was killing, then they would be acting differently. They would be having hundreds of them blocking abortion clinics at best. That's like the best end of it, and then like it gets like worse from there. It's like you'd be killing abortion doctors, or you'd be bombing clinics, or like all these different like war tactics. So I understand why it's a question that's going to come up because, of course, yes, we do think that abortion is killing babies. It's really, really bad. And basically what people do is they, in their mind, they do something that we teach people to do, trot out a toddler. They're like, well, what if toddlers were getting killed? What would we do? And then I think they end up making mistakes because they're
thinking like along the lines, if let's say that I knew a woman was about to kill her toddler, could I kidnap her to prevent her from killing her toddler?
Right.
That's just like to spell that out. I think that's where people kind of go with that.
Right.
And they take the very good trot out a toddler argument, but then they start to apply it elsewhere, and then we start to get
it's out of context.
Yes.
It's like, and I'll tell them like, look, if we ended up in a horrible situation, like this wouldn't be in my lifetime, but in hundreds of years, culture has just gone even further away from the pro-life worldview or is gone anti-religious or something, whatever has happened. And now philosophers like Peter Singer and his predecessors sort of like get into the public consciousness enough. And we kind of say, hey, not only are fetuses not persons, but also babies aren't persons because they're not self-aware. And so you're not a person until you're like 18 months old. And so it becomes legal and normal to kill babies in the first 18 months of life. Let's just like say that happened. Okay, if that was happening, or it's happening all the time, and culture was generally for it. And when I say that, what I mean is the same way that culture is generally for abortion. So the culture, there's kind of this like these two things going on. One, most people think that Roe versus Wade should not be overturned based on the way they understand Roe versus Wade. What that means, most people
do not really understand what Roe versus Wade is, but
and Roe versus Wade isn't even it's not even the thing. It's Casey v. Planned Parenthood, but whatever. They don't even understand that. It's symbolic. But most people think that abortion should be legal, at least in the first trimester, generally speaking. But most people also think that there should be more restrictions on abortion than there currently are. So like America is one of not that many countries that has not completely banned late-term abortions. Right. And the list of other countries that are on that list are not usually the countries that you want to be on the same list of as like the way that they handle human rights things and stuff like that. So it's like, so those things are both true. So it's like, anytime either side is like claiming like whole total victory of the culture, they're both wrong. The culture is still talking. We have a lot more talking to do. We're still sort of in the middle functionally on that. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, okay, so then what I'll say is like, imagine if the situation was like actually comparable to abortion now, because some woman illegally drowning her toddler is not what the abortion situation is right now. Or like a terrorist group kidnapping some toddlers and holding them in a building and they're going to kill them throughout the day. Like that's an analogy I've heard made about abortion clinics. I'm like, that's not the situation. Like, of course, then you bring in the SWAT team. Like, I get it. Yeah. But that's not the in that situation, I would be arguing for doing the same things that I'm doing now. We would want it to become illegal. We would want to legally protect toddlers and newborns. And a lot of times to pull that off, you've got to change culture to some extent. I kind of think like it's never one or the other. It's like some people will be like, well, you got to like just focus on culture. Don't even worry about laws. And some other people want to say, just focus on laws because then, like they'll use like the Martin Luther King quote, I can't force the white man to love me, but I can force him not to lynch me. Okay. I basically think of these two things as like these two like metal balls that are connected with like a cord, and they kind of tug and pull at each other. They kind of, there's like this momentum that they give each other. And so culture needs to change, laws need to change. Sometimes the laws affect culture a little bit because of the discussion, the debate that it forces. And then sometimes culture can affect things. And it just kind of goes like that. And so I would be saying, we should be doing like educational events and talking about why actually newborns are persons, because self-awareness is actually not a necessary condition of personhood. And we'd be doing this talks and trying to convince people. Maybe we would be using graphic science in context where it was persuasive to people. And we would be trying to change the laws. We would be doing all those things. I would not be rushing into any place that killed the toddlers and bombing them or killing people or any of those things. And the problem, and this is why I'm glad you asked this question, the reason why I wrote an article on this like a long time ago was because up until that point, virtually every article I had ever seen pro-life people write about why it's wrong to bomb abortion clinics, like the pro-life movement all comes out. Anytime some quote unquote pro-lifer does something illegal at an abortion clinic. Yeah. Like there was a shooting in Colorado at a Planned Parenthood several years ago. Like the entire pro-life movement comes out and like vocally says we're against this. Okay, but then when they answer why they're against it, it's usually pragmatic arguments. If we do this, it's going to turn more people against us, and it'll actually take us longer to overturn Roe, Casey, than it would have been otherwise.
Which
and
I
it's
think
like,
is true.
Yes, that is true.
But
you're right.
It's not the most helpful response.
No, because of what that says to me as a reader is you don't have a principled problem with it. You just like, because it's practically not helpful to your cause, you're opposed to it. Right. And I was interested in writing an article on why it would be wrong at a principled level to, in this case, kidnap women. So so this thing came up 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. You've read this article way more recently than I have, but like Abolish Human Abortion, which is a pro-life group that doesn't like us and we don't love the things that they do. Like
we'll put a link to this article in the description.
We'll link to the article, and we're not going to get into all the weeds, but they had been falsely accused of having a van that they were going to use to kidnap girls on the way to abortion clinic appointments. So that turned out to be fake. AHA said, no, we're opposed to that. And so the first part of the article was kind of defending like, even though I don't like a lot of the things you do, I don't want people spreading false information about you. So publicly, I'm with you. You're right. Here's the evidence. But then I kind of wanted to take the opportunity to do something that I've been wishing pro-life people had done for a long time, which is, why is it really wrong to bomb an abortion clinic or kill an abortion doctor if you could save like all these lives, kind of a thing? Like beyond the pragmatic, what if the pragmatic thing is not even there? What if it actually wouldn't hurt the pro-life cause? And you can read the article for the full response. Tim helped me with it. We got into the weeds on objectivism versus absolutism, but we're not going to do that right now. The main point that I wanted to make, and the main thing that I say to people who ask me about it is, because a lot of times people will make comparisons to people like Dietrich Bonhoeffer or someone like that. And it's like, hey, that was a war.
That was a very different situation.
The rules are different at war. Like, I don't even understand why I have to explain this sometimes. But like, yes, that was a war. That was different. We're not at war. And very importantly, America is not a despot. I don't care how freaked out you are about religious liberty. Like, I'm on David France's side on this, okay? Like, you don't need to be that worried about religious liberty. Our religious liberty is fine. Our religious liberty is more protected than it ever has been in the past. In fact, even at the end of Obama's term, religious liberty was safer than it ever had been in the past. And I will link to an article if you want the evidence on that. We've never talked about this on the podcast, but I'm just like, I'm all fired up. But like case after case after case, because he was like a lawyer working with ADF for part of the time, but he spent like 25 years defending religious liberty. This guy understands exactly like what liberties are at risk and what liberties are not at risk. Okay, religious liberty, generally speaking, is pretty safe. That's not the thing. So we're not a despot. We still have freedom of speech. We are not like, right before World War II Germany, like at all.
It's not even close.
And it's not even like it's close. Like, yes, the Supreme Court, like even before President Trump nominated Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, we were still like freedom of speech cases were winning at like a 7-2 or 6-3 margin basically every single time. Like the Supreme Court has been very, very solidly pro First Amendment when it comes to freedom of speech issues for like a long time. Like that's not been as big of a concern. There's other concerns. I've got other concerns, okay? But I'm not worried about freedom of speech. I'm not too worried about religious liberty the way things have gone. There are certainly people, there are activists. There are LGBT activists who would like there to be less religious liberty and will go after a masterpiece cake shop and things like that. But generally speaking, they're not winning in court and they're not winning in public opinion either. So we are not a despot, and that just makes us a very, very different situation. So I think as long as there is freedom of speech, the ability for us to be something like a democratic republic where people can affect government, where people can affect the laws, even if it's slow, because it takes a long time to change a lot of people's opinions about a given subject, especially a subject like abortion. As long as that's true, I don't believe, have a principled excuse for going outside the law and harming people in order to get our way. I think there are other arguments that could also be made. There are other principled arguments against, but I think this one's sufficient and we've taken enough time. And so I'll stop. I'll link to the article. You can read the article. But yes, all that to say, pro-lifers should never kidnap people.
Please do not kidnap
certainly
people.
they shouldn't harm people. I even don't, here's the last thing I'll say. And this is something that, some clarity that Steve Wagner at Justice for All helped me with, was to actually take this even a step further, which is to say, not only should we not harm people, meaning we shouldn't shoot abortion doctors and we shouldn't bomb clinics. So we shouldn't even do the kind of vandalism to an abortion clinic that would make the staff feel unsafe. I don't think that we should be doing the kinds of things, like pro-life people don't have a good enough respect for what it is like to work behind bulletproof glass. And abortion clinic workers walk behind bulletproof glass, most of them, every day on their way to work. And there's a reason for that. And it's really, really bad. It is really, really bad that there are ever people who call themselves pro-life. And I don't think they're pro-life because shooting people is not pro-life. But right? So, the fact that did happen enough times that there's a need for that is really, really bad. And so pro-life people should be super, super clear. We're against abortion-related violence, and not merely for pragmatic reasons. We have principled reasons too. It's the wrong thing to do.
Exactly.